What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Down Once More podcast with Matt and Raley. And we're back for yet another amazing review of musical. This week we're going to be talking about Cyrano, the movie Cyrano, the new release, which is, I think it came out last year, 2022, starring Peter Dinklage. Is that his name? Yes. And
Yes.
and it's a remake of an old play, originally an old play, which was also made into a movie back in the day. And this is a remake and sort of a slightly different take on the story of Cyrano, which I think is a pretty popular story. Most people, I think, know the story in general of Cyrano, but if you don't, that is what we will go through tonight. And I'm excited to talk about it. Matt, what's up?
Oh, nothing. Like literally nothing. We are at it is 1 a.m. for Rayleigh, midnight for me as
Yay.
we're recording this, but we are still
That's why
bringing
I
our
look so
A game
pale.
because that's what we do. I thought that was just because
Okay,
you were a
nice.
vampire, but good to know it's because of the time of night.
I am, well,
Oh,
vampires and this time of night go well together, so I am both.
it's true. That's
It's
true.
both true.
Speaking of vampires, if you're not watching the show What We Do in the Shadows on
Oh my god,
FX,
I love
you
that
need to be. It's
show.
so fucking funny.
Holy
This
shit,
season
it's
has
so
been
funny.
great.
I haven't
It's
watched this
so
season.
good.
I saw the last season, but I haven't seen this new one. So it is such a
Yeah.
good show. Like the
Yeah.
writing is phenomenal. The humor is next level. And usually
The
those little
movie
like
was great.
sitcom style shows go like, I usually hate them because they're like really cheesy. And, it reminds me of like the old, what was it called? TV Land, where they played all these
Oh
old
yeah.
sitcoms with like a laugh track
Gilligan's
behind it. Like,
Island
and they
and
had this
I
really
Love
cheesy, like,
Lucy, all that.
yeah, all the weird like I feel like most sitcoms, that's what I think of. And so it's
Yeah.
unusual to
It's
find
fair.
an actual like series on TV on FX that is
Mm-hmm.
actually good, and the humor makes me laugh, which is hard to do. I mean, not in
Yeah.
general, but like for a movie or a show to be
Right.
funny enough that I laugh
TV.
out loud that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's
Matt Berry,
surprising.
who plays Laszlo, he's one of my favorite. Like his line
Is the
delivery and
best.
how he does everything, he's the best. But yeah, no, FX, I feel like FX is neck and neck. Like them and HBO are right side by side in
Yeah,
consistency for TV series. So I
that's
did
true.
a few mini episodes ago. I did like an FX shows, like a tier ranking of all of them. And there's still so many I haven't checked out, but there are just so many. Like there's not really any that I'm like, this sucks. Like
I
all of
know.
them that I've seen are great. Like It's Always Sunny, Sons of Anarchy, The Shield, Justified, What We Do in the Shadows, The Bear. The Bear is fantastic too. Just so many consistently high quality and solid series.
And I don't think they
But
get
that's not
enough
what
of.
we're here
I
to
don't think
talk
they get
about.
enough attention. Compared to
No.
HBO. I think people don't think of it on that level because they think, oh, it's like a TV channel, so it's probably shitty. Like you think of like the
Mm-hmm.
TNT shows or TBS and all those other
Right.
sitcoms, those shows. It's not like that. That's what I think people equate it to, and it's on another level. Like the budget is way better. They
Yeah.
have so much more like interesting plots and better characters, better
Mm-hmm.
casts. Like it's just on another level. So
Yeah.
yes,
That's like I'd put them side by side with HBO
I think
for
you're
that.
right,
Like
which is saying a lot.
quantity wise, they're probably ahead because HBO, they usually have some great ones, but like FX has been doing back to back. Like they did Dave, then Dave finished, then Always Sunny started up shortly after, then What We Do in the Shadows started up shortly after that, and then The Bear was thrown in there too. Um, but yeah. But
Lots of good
anyways,
stuff. Anywho,
we're not
moving
here to
on.
talk about FX.
We
I
are
already did that
here
on an episode.
to talk about Cyrano. Talk about the movie.
Yes.
I was right. It was released in 2022. I'm going to read this very short, quick little synopsis for anybody who doesn't know what the story is about. Again,
Mm-hmm.
this is a remake of an old play originally, and then the play was made into a movie. I want to say back, you probably know this, but by like 60s or 70s that it was made. I don't know.
Yeah.
And this
It
is a new
was,
one based on
yeah,
that
they
same
did. So
story.
they did two movies. They did one in 1950 and 1990.
Oh,
So
wow.
those are
Okay.
the two movie versions, which are very hard to find. The
Mm,
1950s one is easy to find. It's black and white. It's on MGM Plus and other places. But yeah.
all right. And so
Hmm.
here you go. Here's a little plot summary for Cyrano. A man ahead of his time, poet Cyrano de Bergerac, or Peter Dinklage, dazzles, whether with ferocious wordplay at a verbal joust or with brilliant swordplay in a duel. But convinced that his appearance renders him unworthy of the love of a devoted friend, the luminous Roxanne, Cyrano has yet to declare his feelings for her. Meanwhile, Roxanne has fallen in love at first sight with Christian. Dun dun dun. Christian
Dun,
approaches
dun, dun.
Cyrano to ask him to write letters to Roxanne on his behalf. Roxanne falls in love with the witty romantic letters, believing them to be Christian's words of love to her. Ooh. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's a pretty good intro. The
Yeah.
story is that this witty, intelligent, clever, funny, expressive, creative person is ashamed of his looks and will therefore not admit his love to for Roxanne. And Roxanne thinks
Hmm.
she's in love with this other guy, Christian. But Christian is just dull and stupid and doesn't know how to say things well, and he's doesn't have. He's just bleh, you know. He's cute, he's beautiful, but he's bleh. So Cyrano agrees to write letters to Roxanne that say they're
Hmm.
coming from Christian, but they're really the words of love that Cyrano has for her. Right?
Yes.
First thoughts, initial thoughts. I will say right off the bat, uh, Peter Dinklage. I kept going back and forth throughout the whole movie saying,
Hmm.
yeah, he's a really good at this. This is a perfect role for him. To going, I don't know, this didn't really work that well for me. I
Yeah.
think that I was very torn because he's such a good actor. Of course, I love
Yeah.
Game of Thrones. I love him in Game of
Hmm.
Thrones. It's like the best character in the whole show.
And
And so I love
Elf.
him. Elf. Of course, who could forget Elf?
He's the angry elf.
You're an angry elf. That's right. But his acting skills are always they were good. I think 90% of the movie they were good. He has moments where like he didn't. I don't think he nailed it. And then
Yeah.
I also am kind of surprised that it's a musical because the original play and the original
Hmm.
movies were not musicals. They decided to
Right.
make this a musical, which is an interesting choice given that Peter Dinklage is the main character, as he is definitely not a singer. So those two things don't like correlate in my mind very well. Like you either pick
Hmm.
him and you go with the no music because he can't sing, or you go with the music but you find somebody who can sing. I didn't understand that like little that those wires were crossed in my brain. But in
Right.
general, I think he's an excellent actor and he's so likable in this movie. He's like you want to
Hmm.
root for him. What are your initial overview thoughts, general consensus thoughts, ideas? Discuss.
So yes, I'll do a little bit of a history of Cyrano because I did do like a Wikipedia deep dive, as deep as you can get in Wikipedia. So if any of these facts are wrong, don't come for me. Come for those moderators on Wikipedia, that keep asking me to donate, and I don't.
Definitely not.
So
Sorry, Rick.
originally, this was a play in 1897. Is when it was
Wow.
originally the first play produced. So and then it was like we discussed. It was a movie um, in 1950 and 1990. There's two different film versions of that. In 2009, there was a version of the play that was filmed, and you can find it on Broadway HD, which they do like they have film Broadway things on there that had Kevin Kline and Jennifer Garner. Um,
Interesting.
hmm So in the original story in the play, Cyrano, he's not a little person. Um,
Right. He's not.
he has a very large pointy nose is what
It's
is his
huge.
odd thing. He has a huge nose that
Which,
apparently keeps people from loving him.
right.
Um, and
Love it.
Roxanne is his distant cousin, not just a
Oh,
friend that grew up in the
that's
same
right.
town. That
Ooh, I
they're
forgot about
related,
that.
so it's got some
Super weird.
some incest vibes. But so in this, you talked about it being a musical, that being kind of odd. According to Wikipedia, in 1973, It was had a short-lived run. There was a musical adaptation version of it with Christopher Plummer as Cyrano.
Hmm.
That's what Wikipedia says. Found like no other information on that, but but this movie itself, it was adapted into an off Broadway version. That's kind of a stripped down version of the story in 2018 with Peter
Hmm.
Dinklage as Cyrano, and it was a musical then.
Interesting.
And originally Roxanne was played by Jasmine Cephas Jones, who was in Hamilton. She played Peggy and the
Oh, and
lady
the
he has
harlot.
the affair with. I'm blanking on her name. But yeah, and
Yeah,
Jasmine
I don't
Cephas
remember her name
Jones
either.
is great. Like
She's
she has
amazing. She
such a
has a
good voice. She is so
beautiful
good. So
voice.
she was the Roxanne, and then Haley Bennett, who played Roxanne in the movie, she took over for Jasmine Cephas Jones off
Hmm.
Broadway and also played Roxanne. So Peter Dinklage and Haley Bennett are transplants from the off Broadway version that was a musical
Hmm.
into this movie.
It's
Um,
interesting because that little factoid that you've just given me makes a lot of sense. If you watch the movie knowing that, like looking back on it, I can see that the chemistry, like as far as acting goes, is way stronger between Peter Dinklage and Haley Bennett,
Bennett.
Bennett. So you can see that they have like actual chemistry, not in the plot. I'm talking about the people acting
Hmm.
way more so than Christian with Roxanne, and it's some
Right.
of that plays into their love for each other, but also the fact that Peter Dinklage and Haley Bennett have acted together
Hmm.
before. It seems
Yeah.
more congruent, and they
Right.
seem a little bit they flow a little better.
And I think one of your comments about Peter Dinklage, like there's parts where you're like, oh, he's so good at this, and there's parts you're like, I don't really know, like I'm not feeling it. That was one of
Yeah,
my overall thoughts with this movie as a whole. Like there's
yeah,
times with I really enjoy the music, like the songs are good, the score is good, but their line delivery is at points is like they are doing a stage production, not like they are doing a movie. Like
correct.
especially in the when Roxanne and Cyrano they meet in the like the baker shop or whatever there, and they're having their
Yeah,
back and forth. She is giving like stage line delivery. And
yeah,
it's just kind of off-putting and jarring in the movie.
yeah,
Same with Peter Dinklage, as some is when he's going back and forth with her and some of their conversations,
yeah,
um, both in that scene and others, that it's just like like the timing, it's like this would work well on stage, but where
yeah.
you have that built out set piece, it seems weird. Same with a lot of the like the large scale dancing scenes, which I
Right.
know that's part of what makes a musical so grand and everything, but
It felt
it
very
doesn't it's
theatrical,
it's
and
it's
it's
very right, it's very theatrical, and so that's kinda jarring. Like, I don't love all the stage production, like, blocking and choreography that they have
yeah,
in the movie.
me neither.
It makes it feel more like a stage version
Right.
when I think, like, realistically, this is one of the most beautifully shot like, this has some of the most beautiful cinematography of any musical. Like, when they are in the battle scene later on, like, how it's looked like the lighting and everything and the sets and everything looks so beautiful and like crisp and it's
Yeah,
fantastic and it's so well directed, but then there's those other things that just pull
yeah.
me out of it and it's just
I felt that way
weird.
about. I absolutely agree. I felt that way about the scene. Actually, it's Cyrano's first scene when he comes in and like calls out the
Mhm.
guy on stage. McFlurry. I don't know whatever his name is.
Mhm.
McFlurry is a
Yeah.
McDonald's treat.
McFlurry. But I think that's actually what it is. Um,
So when he
it's
comes
spelled
in and like,
differently.
yes, when he comes in and like calls that guy out and tells him like what a terrible actor he is and all this stuff, those lines that he delivered, which is the first impression you get of Cyrano in the movie, immediately I was like, ooh, this feels really forced. Like he's a good
Mhm.
actor. I've seen him act and he doesn't act like that.
Right.
So why is he
Right. Uh,
overdoing it here? He's overacting and it's like really distracting. And so I
mhm.
felt from that moment, I was like, man, this is not a good way to start off.
Yeah.
He I don't know if it was just because he's used to doing it on stage. Maybe they're like that's just where they're used to doing these lines on a stage, so it's hard to
Right.
tone that down when you've got cameras filming you instead.
Mhm.
But But yeah, it is very distracting at times. I also want to say that in the originals, like you said, Cyrano has this grotesque nose, right? It's just like awful to look at. And really, his face is kind of like pockmarked a little bit. He's got some like other issues with his skin, his complexion stuff. So he's
But
considered
he's no
like,
Phantom.
no, no, no,
It's not Phantom levels.
no. And you know what?
Hmm.
He, speaking of fancy, he could have just put a mask on and nobody would have ever known his gigantic nose. I mean, I don't know why he didn't get plastic surgery, but I'm just saying.
I
Anywho,
mean, really, the gigantic nose could be a benefit for like oral purposes and
I'm
stuff.
saying put that thing to use,
Like,
yo. What I mean? What I mean?
find the positives.
But
Hmm.
anyway, so the original, his face is really just like unpleasant to look at, and that's the whole point. Another place where this movie I disconnected from was the fact that the only thing wrong with Cyrano in this movie, this version of it, is that he's a little person. And two things. A, I understand that it's the time period that they're supposed to be filming in, that someone who is a little person would have been considered a dwarf or a midget or used like, that's a very like
Hmm.
freakish way to be. And back
Right.
then, they didn't exactly accept you as a normal human if you looked different. So I get that. But on the other side, he's not a bad looking guy. He has a lot of charm. It's not like he's shy or like awkward or anything. He's actually quite likable and handsome and like nothing's really wrong with him, so I felt like this whole time I didn't feel his pain of being ugly or being an outcast as much as I did in the old
Hmm.
versions. The old versions, you're like, man, I feel for you, go, because I don't think anybody would ever like that face. You can't look at that and not go, ooh, I feel for you. You felt more compassion for him because he's struggling in his world of isolation and
Hmm.
feeling, separated and not feeling loved. This character in this movie has kind of got everything he needs, except for the fact that he's just a little shorter than everybody else. uh, so I feel like it was a little bit too. He wasn't. I don't know. He wasn't enough. Does that make sense? For him to be
Yeah, but see,
so ashamed of himself.
I saw it as the opposite. I saw it
Really?
as the other one. I'm like, so you have a big nose, big freaking whoop. And I'm like, oh, how horrible. Your nose is large. And this one, I'm like, well, it makes more sense. Like he's more on his own. He's the little person and stuff like that. He's more of an outlier there and an outcast and different than others in that regard. Um, so I know that's interesting.
Interesting.
It's interesting.
It's
I mean,
opposite views on
I will
that.
be honest. I've never watched the older ones in full. Like I've seen bits and pieces and parts of it, but I never watched the older ones. I know that it's. I mean, well, and that's kind of one of the complaints people had with
The
even like Game of Thrones. Peter Dinklage, like that character
mhm.
Tyrion in the books, is a lot more grotesque and like
Uh-huh.
he's supposed to be ugly, and they're like, well, Peter Dinklage is a decent looking dude. Like he's just
He's a good looking
short.
guy. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that
So
for me, that was a little. It was a little. I found it hard to feel a lot of compassion for him because I
that's
feel
fair.
like he would just be kind of normal other than his height. But
One
that's that.
in that regard, one thing I thought was hilarious when Cyrano, after he has this conversation with Roxanne at the bake shop, and then he goes back to like the barracks or whatever, their quarters where they're training, he has his own personal like punching bag, like like at his height. And I'm like,
I
well, that's
totally
very
missed that.
accommodating of them. Like, because it's like that low to the ground. And I'm
I
like,
did
well,
not
no one
even
else
pay
is
attention to
benefiting
that.
from that. I thought that was great.
I didn't even
But
notice that, but that's so
mhm,
true. I wonder if they also had
yeah.
like little step ladders everywhere, just so he can like get up on, like, get to the next level. Like, oh, bring over his
Well,
stool. Come
that's the
on,
other
stepping
thing
stool.
that I think is interesting with that. Like him being in the guard and part of that and a soldier. Realistically, like if we're doing that in that time frame, most likely if you were a little person, they're not letting you join the
Yeah,
guard regiment.
probably not.
No matter how good of a swordsman you are. I mean, and if we're
Yeah,
being real honest, they're probably not letting you if you're not white either.
true,
Um,
true, true.
but because that's one thing. So Kelvin Harrison Jr. plays Christian. I thought he was really good. He has a really good voice. He's a good
Yes,
actor. He was in, I'm not sure if you've seen it. I think I've mentioned it. I mentioned it on a mini episode, at least. I don't remember if I've mentioned it with us. The movie Chevalier. which
Yeah, you
is
mentioned it. Yeah.
yeah, which he is in, and so that's the same actor, and he is fantastic in that too.
Right.
And that's one of, I think that's a, I don't know the time periods of these, but that's in France, and talked about how he was kind of shunned and everything, and didn't get the recognition he deserved because of the color of his skin and everything. And so it's like,
Ah.
I don't know,
Hmm.
but it's interesting. But Kelvin Harrison Jr., like, I'm excited to see him in more things, especially like these musical projects, because he's so talented. He's
Yeah.
got a good voice. I feel like his acting skills weren't really shown off as much in this, but in Chevalier,
Yeah. He's
it's
kind of
great.
a muted character. He's
Hmm.
like just kind of there. He doesn't have a whole lot of personality, not a whole lot of
Right.
contribution to the movie, which is part of the point. But um, and then what was I going to say? Oh, for the original in the movie, it must have been the '90s version that I saw because I would have watched it in middle school. I think it was we were having some sort of, I don't know, movie appreciation class or something, and my teacher showed
Hmm.
me this movie. Again, not a musical, but I think it was his name is Gerard Depardieu, which is
Hmm.
he was like a really famous French actor from that time. So I don't know if he's still alive actually, but he did a great job of being just utterly outcast and like completely alone. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I remember seeing him.
I'm
I
checking
remember
out.
relating to him. But then, oh, I was going to say, oh, we were talking about the scene where they have the bakery talk where Cyrano is convinced that Roxanne is trying to confess her love to him. And he's so excited because he's been holding it in this whole time. And he's just so into it. Yes, yes, yes. Who does this guy that you love telling me to love him? Maybe he feels the same. And then she drops the bomb. It's like, only I've never spoken to him before. It's like, you've never spoken to him about your
Of your
love?
love?
At all. Nothing at all. He's like, oh shit. And his
Yeah.
face, man, I have to give it to him. His face
Dude.
sold it. You are so heartbroken for this guy in that
Hmm.
moment. Like, oh my God, no. He's so broken. He's so sad. And I still don't understand why he would volunteer to help Christian be with Roxanne. Like, this is the woman he loves. And not only is he saying, okay, I have to step back because this guy is clearly the one she wants, he's helping it happen. He's assisting it just because he
I
wants to be a part of her life, because he wants to be near
I
her, because he wants her happiness.
because
Why
yes,
would he do that?
I think it's because he wants her happy, and he talked about before with the conversation that he feels like he's not deserving of her love, like a
Right,
person like him. That's what he says to his the other captain or soldier, whatever, that he's friends with, buddies.
right,
He's like, I'm not deserving of her love and stuff, that he thinks he's not good enough for her and everything like that, and he
right.
ultimately wants her to be happy. And so to him, as much as it pains him, he's still being able to communicate his love to her through these letters, even though
Mm-hmm.
she thinks they're Christian. And that pains him when he's having like the walk and talk with her after they've had some conversations.
Yeah.
And he's like kind of glowing. He's like, you memorized his letters, you know them all. Yeah. And you
Yes.
can see like
He's like, oh,
beaming on his face because he
yeah.
knows that like how his words have affected her and how they make her feel.
Oh my God.
And
But
she's
he's
like, well,
so
can you help me meet
heartbroken.
him? And he's like, would you love him even if he weren't beautiful? And she's like, well, but he is so beautiful, so that's why it's
So
so
I guess.
perfect. She's like, god damn it. um but
Oh, I was gonna say I
okay,
forgot that the nose thing. Back to the nose thing. He has this gigantic nose in the other one, old one, right?
yeah,
You know what that made me think of when I think of his face. The other thing I think of in association with that is, did you ever see the movie? I think it's called Just Go With It or Go With It with Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston,
yes,
where he has to
yes,
set up this whole like fake family so that the
uh-huh,
girl can he falls in love with this model, whatever.
hmm,
In the very beginning of that movie, Adam Sandler is supposed to be marrying this beautiful woman, and he's just got this huge, ugly. It's so fake looking. It's so stupid. A huge nose,
yes,
and then he
that's right,
becomes a plastic surgeon and
that's
fixes
right,
his nose. So like later on, he doesn't have any
uh-huh,
problems. But
that's
that
right.
that nose and Cyrano's nose, those are together in my brain for whatever reason. It happens. Anywho,
That's
moving
fair.
on. Please tell me what you were about to say
Yes.
before I interrupted you.
No, like we talking about that whole scene with them going back and forth and why Cyrano does what he does. He didn't want to, and it's one of, like I said, I think it's just he's like, me being able to communicate my love to her in this way is better than not being able to communicate it at all. And even though it pains him so much, which I mean, we see that one time when they arrange to meet in person, and first he screws the pooch hardcore because Christian's like, I don't need you anymore. And then he sucks. And she's like, what the
What
fuck?
the
He's like, you, you
like?
are an idiot.
Why
And
are
then
you so dumb?
she sings that song, the I Need More song,
Uh huh.
which is kind of fucking harsh, but also kind of fair.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, I need more than like the words, and talk about how she it's from something else, or maybe it's from this too, where she says like, I'm not just a flower to be won. Like, that's how she's gone
Right.
through life. She's been viewed as, from the creepy rapey ass duke, um
Dude.
which is such a weird role. Like, Ben Mendelsohn is a fantastic actor
Such a good
and he's
actor.
good in this,
Yes.
but it's such a weird role. And like, his singing, the songs that he sings are,
So
I
weird
don't
too.
like those.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that whole creepy like he's like basically
he's very
giving her
creepy.
like a rape ultimatum where he's like, you either marry me or you don't, and I rape you.
I'll
Like,
take what I want
I mean,
anyways. Yeah.
it's bugging here. But yeah, and then he sings
Yeah.
that song on the way to her house where he's just like, I deserve to have what I want and I'm gonna take it because it's all mine. And, like, but it's a
Yeah.
weird song and he's got a weird voice and
It's
it's a very it's like odd.
it's my least favorite song in the musical. I mean, like, straight up.
And you'd think
It's
that he would be, because he's such an evil dude, right? You think he'd be even more angry when he sees Christian and Roxanne getting married. But he's just like, that's not fair. I wanted to marry her. Boo. Okay, I'm leaving
yeah.
now. Like,
Well, and that's what I think. I think it's a combination. I think it's because, like I said, I would think that anger would have been the biggest reaction.
yeah,
But as fucked up as his feelings and he is, I think he genuinely did love her in
yeah,
his own
in
way.
his weird,
And
creepy
so I
way.
think in that moment he was more hurt than anything else. And so like his reaction was like, well, we're going off to war. Tough shit.
Yeah,
He's like, me killing the dude right here is not gonna do anything. And so I think he was hurt. And then it was also like, well, it's gonna hurt her more if I just take him away from her.
yeah,
Like,
a bit of
it's gonna suck
revenge.
for her. Yeah.
That's
But
true.
yeah, that um but like back after that first meeting when Christian goes to make it up, and then he's having the conversation with Roxanne up there, and he's down in the doorway and Cyrano's telling him what to say.
Right.
And then Christian's just fucking it up and Cyrano starts talking for him. And I'm just
Can we
this is
not?
very clearly two very different people. And like she's even like, oh, your
Your voice is
voice
an
is
octave
different.
lower.
And he's like, I'm daring to be myself. And it's like, it's just so fucking obvious.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
she's not an idiot. And I get that
Well, maybe
she's
she
farther
is
away than the audience. I mean, maybe. Um,
because I'm pretty sure I would
but
be able to tell the difference between those two guys' voices,
yeah,
facing them or not. I'm pretty sure that I would know that those are two different voices.
right. And I
It is.
mean,
It's really like
Christian,
unrealistic in a lot of ways, obviously, because it's supposed to be like a silly,
right,
story. But but that was like really. We're gonna just
right,
let that fly, and nobody's gonna talk about how obvious this is.
right. They don't sound even remotely similar. And
No.
like Christian, I like his character, we're supposed to be like, he genuinely does have feelings for Roxanne. He's just not very bright. Like, he's not good with his words. He doesn't know how to communicate that as well to her. Like, he does have the feelings for her, but when he is standing
You
right
are a
across from
flower.
Cyrano,
You're a flower. Can I kiss your neck? The fuck?
Jesus, it's so cringy.
I love you.
Um,
I love you so much. I love you. My love for you is so big. It's just so big that I love you so much. You're a flower. Can I
she's
kiss your
just
neck?
like, the
Get out of here.
no, the
What
fuck.
kind of weird ass shit
But
are you
yeah,
into?
but then he is standing across from Cyrano, and Cyrano is speaking directly to her because he's fucking it up. And he is looking at Cyrano, and he is seeing the emotion on Cyrano's face and seeing that the emotion, the words he's saying. And I know we've established he's kind of an idiot, but he has to be the biggest idiot to not see that, oh, he's actually in love with her. And so, like,
Clearly.
Cyrano's saying all these heartfelt things, and she's like, well, what do you want? And he just pops out and he's like, a kiss. He's like, the fuck? I'm like, one, you're an
Don't.
asshole. Because,
Yeah.
like, if you cannot see, like, the emotion of the love that this man has for her, then you're just like,
God.
can I have a kiss?
Can we have a
It's
kiss?
just like, Jesus Christ.
It's like a little kid, you know? He's like, I want, I want, I want.
Cyrano's also like,
Oh,
like,
why are you doing that?
no,
What
don't
the
do
fuck?
that. Yeah,
Oh, it's so cringy. He's super cringy. I
yeah,
agree with you though that it's impossible for him to only figure out that Cyrano loves her after they've been corresponding with her and doing all these things for weeks, maybe months, who knows. But he just then realizes at the end of the movie, oh, you mean you love her too?
yeah.
Shit. And
Like, oh,
that's
fuck.
when they both decide that, or that's when Christian decides that he needs to have a conscience and like let her know. You guys have been deceiving her and setting this up, outside of her control. You're basically manipulating her and lying to her
Yeah, yeah,
for what? Who's getting anything out of this? She's being lied to. You're marrying someone who thinks that you're different than you. You're not you. And then
yeah.
Cyrano's like, I don't get shit all. I gotta write all these beautiful lyrics and words and letters, and I never get
Hmm.
fucking anything. So this is a bad situation, and you're doing bad things to
Yeah,
her, whether it's for love purposes or what. You're still being
yeah.
manipulative, lying
No matter how
assholes
you
by
justify
just
it, right,
tricking her. So, and not until the very end of the movie do they go, we should probably tell her that, like, she doesn't actually love me.
right.
I don't understand what the end game was though. Did they really think that like after a few letters and a few encounters that Christian and
Right.
Roxanne can get married? And are they gonna just carry? Is he gonna carry Cyrano in a little backpack everywhere he goes? Like, come on, Cyrano, we're going on a date with my wife. Oh, come on,
Kind of
Cyrano, we're,
funny.
we're gonna go fuck my wife now. Can you tell me what to say to her? Can you tell me the dirty talk I need to give her? I mean, come on. Like, what do you guys think is gonna happen here? How do you see this playing out? What's
Well,
the end
it's
game here?
similar to what he's saying about his love. It's so big.
It's
I
so big.
just like, but
It's just so
yeah,
so big.
yeah.
What's the end
Logistically,
goal
there were
here?
issues,
What did you
and
think was gonna happen?
also it's like, I mean, at one point, like if you're Cyrano, you got to be like, man, I've loved this girl for so long, but her not being able to put two and two together that this fucking guy is not the one writing these letters, she's a dummy. I'm like,
She's not all that intelligent
ugh.
either.
Yeah, but
It is a little heartbreaking though that she doesn't. I think she always knew. Like she kind of senses it because at the end when she finally says it out loud,
right.
she's like, "I knew it." I think she knew
She's
all
like, I've
along.
always loved Cyrano. Yeah.
Yeah, she just didn't want to admit to herself that it was like happening. But I think she knew. And at the end, it's so heartbreaking that she finally says, I hate the last line. I hate the last line when she says, I love Cyrano. And he says, right before he dies, I loved my bride.
My pride.
Dead.
Hmm.
Like, dude, bro, you didn't even say you love her. You can't.
Well,
Why do we have that as the last thing you'll
I
ever say to her? That's awful.
I agree and I disagree. Like I think like the ending itself is a bummer of an ending.
Super bummer.
Um
Mm-hmm.
which I mean that's apparently that's how the play end too. Like
Well,
Cyrano
this is
dies.
your basic
But
Greek tragedy, right? Nobody gets with a happy
right.
ending in the end. It's the typical Shakespearean or Greek tragedy.
Hmm. But I actually didn't mind the ending line of him saying they loved his pride. Like coming to the realization, like where she said she loves Cyrano, she'd always loved him. If he hadn't cared so much about the optics, about how he was viewed, about what she would think about him, if he
Or the
was
potential
deserving of
rejection
love
that she was
enough,
going to
or
give
the
him.
potential
Yeah.
rejection, if he didn't care so much about his pride, then he could have had
He,
so much more, and he could have had what Christian had for the longest time and everything like that, and that love, and their story could have ended drastically differently. Like he might not have died. And it was like just him having that realization that he loved his pride more than anything else, as much as he wanted to tell himself that he loved Roxanne most. It was his pride was ultimately what got in the way and kept
I
him.
get
So
that. I get that.
I didn't mind the ending line.
I just
Like
hate that he doesn't ever
it's an
actually
ending as
say "I
well.
love you." You know, like he never
Right.
actually says the words "I love you, Roxanne" throughout the whole
Yeah.
movie. He never says it. So I feel like that the way they ended, I just feel like
That's
it was
fair.
unfinished. You know, at least say it
Yeah.
one time before you die. That's the
I get
last thing
that.
she's gonna hear from you is that you loved your pride more than you loved her. Like that's not what I want to hear when you're going out. You know, like
Right.
I really love my pride, and I didn't really I loved it too much to love you. So peace.
Right.
Like this is terrible
Yeah.
ending. It's just sad.
Yeah, it's a bummer of a musical, like, in general. Like, it has some really, like, beautiful songs, like, the "Wherever I Fall" sequence at the battle with all the soldiers
Oh
when they're
yeah,
heading off to
yeah.
war and they're, like, writing their
Yes.
letters, like, that's just
Yes.
fucking heartbreaking. Fun
It
fact, the
is.
first guard that starts singing
Are you gonna
is,
say what I was gonna say? It's Glenn Hansard from Once.
yeah,
I was gonna say
yeah,
it too. I looked at
mhm,
his face and I was like, wait, I know that face. And then he started singing and I was like, I know that voice. I have seen
yep.
Once many, many times, and that's Glenn Hansard, and he has an amazing voice. And I wish he had a bigger part in this movie.
Right. Falling Slowly is another one. Like, it hasn't made on any of my lists, but Falling Slowly
Oh
is one of the best musical songs
yes.
ever.
I
Like,
can't believe I
such
haven't
a
put that
good
on my
song.
list. Oh, it's definitely one of my favorites of all.
Mhm.
It's
I
so
think I
good.
don't always correlate it to being a musical
Yeah,
song. But, like, it's very much like Once is we will talk about Once at some point on here. Like, it's
we
very
need
much
to.
it's a musical. Um,
And
like, it's
not but
very
not in
low
a
budget
traditional way.
indie
Yeah,
musical,
right.
right? But it's got, um we're doing a Once bunny trail now, but Falling Slowly and Say It to Me Now, like, I love both those songs. Like, Say It
So
to Me Now
good.
is, oh, so good. If you
I
haven't listened to those songs or seen Once, you need to go
do
do that.
need to
It's
because
great. It has great music.
I don't know
It's
how I
like the
where I came across it the first time. I think it was by accident. Like I was just getting like I picked up some random DVDs in Walmart. You know, they have those big baskets of like DVDs for
mhm,
$3, and I was digging in and I just found it and I'd never heard of it. Took it home, watched it, and I was like, "Holy shit! How is nobody talking about this? This movie's amazing, so good. The music's awesome, the characters great, the cast is awesome. It's so low budget. It feels very real and very like
mhm,
relatable." Anyway, enough of that. But I love that movie.
yeah.
So if you haven't seen it, go watch it for sure.
Yeah. I found it because, someone on American Idol sang Falling Slowly, and they talked
Oh,
about it being from that musical, and so I went and found it. This was back when I was in, like, fucking high school or
right.
something. But yes, yes, it is so good. But
So
yeah,
good. Anyway,
that that whole song and that sequence of everyone writing their letters before they're marching off to death, and even, like, Cyrano and Christian's, like, back and forth, and Christian realizing, like, the fucking idiot. Like, how he finally realizes, like, "Oh, you actually love her," is when, Cyrano tells him he wrote, like, a final letter for him, and he sees the tear stain on it.
yes.
He's like, "Well, you cried when you wrote this?" He's like, "Well, it's just by emotion with it," and then Cyrano's like, "I've been writing her more often than you think I've been writing her," and he's like, "How often?" He's
How
like,
often?
"Well, every day," and he's like, "What the
Every
fuck?" Um
day.
and then they get in a whole fight, and then he's finally like, "Well, you have to tell her." He never tells her until he's dying. She figures it out. Well, he asks to read Christian's last letter to her. Um, and then he's like reading it out loud, but not looking. And she's like, "You're not reading that."
Hang on a second.
um, Wait a minute. But also convenient that she carried that letter with her wherever she went.
Yeah. Wait, I still
So
don't
she had it
understand
on
why
her.
he wrote a farewell letter because I guess because they had just sent them to the front, right? Like
The
the
fucking
Dukes
Duke,
finally said
yeah,
like send the
ordered them
guard.
that they were going
It
to
was
the front,
basically like they
and so
were
they're like, "Yeah,
walking into
we're
a
fucked."
yeah, they were walking into a like,
Yeah,
for sure going to be defeated here, definitely going to die here.
yeah,
I don't understand why Christian
and I
had to
mean,
go commit suicide. He could have at least taken out some of the enemy while he was going out, but like he just ran
right,
out there and got shot. Like
yeah,
could have at least gotten one guy
right.
help
Well,
out.
and I thought it was interesting too that at the end, like when Christian's like, "Well, no, you have to tell her," and when he's mad at him, he's like, um, "Well, I'd rather be loved for my true self than not at all," and it's like, my dude, like, that was an issue from the very beginning.
Yeah,
Like, that's just not an issue
that's
now that you know that Cyrano loves her. Like that,
you didn't have a
even
problem
if he
with
didn't love
being
her,
totally false and lying about everything as long as you had the girl. But now
right?
Cyrano's going to step in and you think he's going to steal your girl. Well, I don't need her anyway because I want somebody to love me for my true self. Like, dude, no. If you
Yeah,
wanted that, you wouldn't have been with Roxanne because she clearly don't love you the way you are. She don't love you,
right,
you. She loves Cyrano version of you.
right. So I don't know. Like overall, I have watched this. Like not a ton. Oh, one other odd thing. I don't know if you noticed it too, because this was filmed during COVID. Did you notice the extras in the city? There were multiple people wearing masks.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah. So like they made them look like period type masks. So it's not like they're wearing like
Interesting.
N95 masks, but there are a lot of people in some of the city scenes,
Huh.
like especially like older extras that have forms of masks on. And I think that's an interesting thing that you see in some of the movies from that were filmed during COVID, like the
Interesting.
newest Matrix movie, which kind of sucked ass.
No surprise there.
They have that too, where there's people in certain scenes that are wearing masks because filmed during COVID, and they're like, "Well, we're just gonna make it part of this." And in Cyrano, there's some that are wearing like cloth ones that
Huh.
are just over their face, but then there's other ones that have almost like masquerade masks, but they're only over this part of their face.
Huh. I don't know
So
how I missed
I
that.
thought that was interesting.
I don't know how. I'm gonna
Hmm.
have to go back and look for that now. I missed it.
Yeah,
I think.
but
Go
I,
ahead.
I do really enjoy this movie. Like it's not one of my top 5 or anything like that, but someone to say I really like that song. Um,
Yeah, that's a good
I think
one.
that's great in it. Like Peter Dinklage, he doesn't have a traditionally good voice. I think he does a fine job for
Yeah.
what he's asked to do, and they don't give him like a ton of range in any of the songs that he sings. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of tailored to his voice a little bit. Um but like the one he has when he duels, like I enjoy that song. Um
Hmm.
the other ones that he has I think are fine. I
I think
I don't know.
I've had
Overall, I do like the music.
I've had that song on a loop in my head for so long since I watched this movie. It's been the "Have you ever loved something so much you could barely breathe?"
Madly.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
had that on a loop in my
Yeah.
brain because.
I like
But
that
I
one.
think I like the music in this movie. But I felt like there wasn't a lot of range in terms of difference or variety in the music. It
That's
all
fair.
sounds similar. They all have kind of the same tone, same like flow, sort of similar
Hmm.
melodies. It's kind of a dark, but also like melancholy and like a little bit
They're all pretty slow
bittersweet.
and melancholy.
They have
There's
the
not like an
same
upbeat
sound,
anthem
right?
type thing, like a victorious or triumphant song. Like that
Right.
just doesn't exist.
They're
Like
all just
someone to
kind of
say is
like
the closest you get to that.
right. It's
And
all
it's
they all
not
kind of
even.
have the same feel. So if you listen to the soundtrack from
I get
start to
that.
finish, it's kind of like listening to similar songs the whole time. But
Yeah.
that doesn't take away from the fact that the writing was good and I like the lyrics and I like the melody. I like the dark melancholy melodies too. What else was I gonna say? I had another thing I was gonna talk about. What was it?
Hmm. It wasn't the
uh,
little punching bag because you didn't notice that
no, I
shit.
did not notice that.
Um,
Well, this isn't it, but I'll say this
was it the
too.
sheep in Monfleur? It's Monfleury. It's not
Monflurry.
McFlurry. It's
I like McFlurry better.
Monflurry. That's right.
McFlurry with M and
Uh,
M's or Oreos.
yeah.
um,
Speaking of Eminem, uh, he produced a movie about rap battles called Bodied, which is actually fantastic. I watched it the other
really?
night. It's almost like a spiritual successor to 8 Mile. It's like modern day, and it's about a white guy that he loved like slam poetry, and he was really kind of like obsessed with rap battles. He's writing like a thesis on certain things and following it, and then he gets involved in it. But like the bars and the battles that are written are so good. It's free on YouTube Premium if you have that. Otherwise you can rent it on like Voodoo or something. I watched it the other night because one of the podcasts I listened to, they listed it as an underrated movie. I
Hmm.
watched it and it was great. Like I loved it. Sorry, said
I'll
M&M.
check that
You
out.
were talking about the candy, but
I
in
was.
my head, it went there. Um,
So, oh, I remember what I was going to say. So, two things. First thing is, I really love the, like you said, the cinematography and the shots in this movie. One of the ones that really stood out to me was when they do the um, sort of mixture of what's it called, a montage of the letter writing and her reading and her receiving the letters and
yeah,
sending them back, and those the three of them are popping up on the screen, and then the scene where all the letters are just like falling down in the room.
yeah,
It's so beautiful. It was really well done. I think I wasn't a fan of a lot of the choreography that the extras did or the troupe did. um, I think some of it was cheesy, some of it was like overdone, and some of it just didn't, for me it didn't fit with the movie. So there's, people
hmm
like waving their hands all over the place and like all these soldiers dancing and stuff. Dancing I love, but I felt like the choreography was like meh to me. It didn't add anything to it. But can we talk
yeah.
about the dick shaped tower that the soldiers are dancing on? You got to go back and look at this, or just find the clip in the movie and put it in the video. It's like
Let's
an
see.
aerial shot of them, of all the
An
soldiers, and they're like,
areola shot.
oh lord, yes, and a nipple shot from high up, and it's shoots down on this, like, it's, I don't know if it's a fort or if it's like the structure for the soldiers, like a
That's
barracks
during
maybe.
someone to say, right?
Yes, it's during a song. I think it's Someone to Say,
I'm pretty sure it's someone to say. That's the only song that takes place there.
when it's like by the water. They're almost like on the beach, kind of. There's a fortified structure, maybe of
Yeah,
some barracks or a fort or something that the soldiers are in, and they're doing this dance on the top, or like the top level, and the shot from high up is clearly like a drone shot. That thing looks like a dick. It looks like a dick, and I was too distracted by the fact that it was phallic that to even pay attention to the dancing or the music at that point. I was just like, that's a giant concrete dick. Period.
I'm finding it now because I was watching it.
Good.
I was rewatching it before we did this because I do, like I said, it's one of the more beautifully shot musicals that I've seen. Like the production design and everything is so good
Yeah.
at it, and like it's just so fun to watch. Um, and also like the fight scene choreography is really good. Like when Cyrano fights the people in the alley, like how that's shot with the
Yeah.
action and the lighting with the torches and everything.
Yeah.
Like that's really good and impressive too.
It
And I
is
think
good.
this director had done a number of things. I'm watching the scene now.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it's very clear. But there's just Christian standing there right now. And then Peter Dinklage making faces at him. Um but that's one of the scenes like that I'm talking about. I'm like, it's it kind of takes you out of it because some of it's like, hey, well, this is a movie with musical songs in it, and then we're gonna
Right.
have these big dance numbers with it. That
Yeah.
makes it feel more like the stage production.
Right. Yeah,
He's
I
just
agree with that.
standing there singing now. Maybe I already missed it, but yeah, I don't
I'll
know.
find
I
it.
thought, oh, and then he's like, we are going to be the best of friends. Like Kelvin Harrison Jr. Like I said, he's a good actor, but then
He's so
some of those
dopey.
the line delivery on some of these things,
Yeah.
it's like, what kind of direction did you give these people?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that some of it
um,
is obnoxiously cheesy and overdone. Um,
yeah,
I think that's all I was going to talk about, except for, did I say what? What eventually happens with the Duke? Nothing, right? We kind of just leave off after he sends these
yeah.
guys to the
After
front.
he sends them to
We
the
don't hear
front,
anything more from him, right?
oh,
I do love that he called one of them, called out in the theater in the very first scene. Oh, there it is. Yes, that's it. It's a dick-shaped fortress that they dancing on.
that that does look like a nice little mushroom head right there.
Just
Um,
saying. Sorry,
It's at
folks. I
the
didn't mean to ruin that moment,
45-minute
but
mark of the movie. If
check
you're
it
not
out.
watching the YouTube version and you're really curious where to see the phallic imagery in this movie, now you know. At the 45-minute and 4-second mark of Cyrano, you can see
Enjoy, folks. Enjoy. Um,
it.
I did like that in the first scene. Somebody called him out for as being ridiculous that he showed up to the theater without ribbons and bows and curls. Like, the men of that time period are so much more
Oh yeah,
elegantly
flamboyant.
furnished, furnished,
Mm-hmm.
clothed. I
Their
don't know.
makeup and
They have really thick white makeup and they have these big powdery wigs, and the ribbons and bows and they're like little pointy shoes. And I just thought that was
I
hilarious
mean the
that a man
guy
was
he
like, "How
duels
dare you
with.
come out here without ribbons and curls? It's
Yeah,
offensive." Like,
yeah.
okay.
The guy he duels with and kills, like in the opening thing in the
Yeah,
play, it's like they made a joke about him trying on the dress that was for Roxanne. like
that's
like we're
right.
doing the cross-dressing
That's what's happening.
jokes.
Making fun of
Um
trans.
yeah. Yeah, back in whenever the fuck this is supposed to take place.
Right.
Um but yeah, like it's not one of my favorite movie musicals ever, but I don't think it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a downer. Like it's not like an upbeat one, like we said. Like all the songs are kind of one note and it's kind of melancholy. But Haley Bennett, like she has a fantastic voice and gives a fantastic performance of this. Even though some of the line delivery choices are jarring, but I think it's still well done. And it's, as far as I can tell, like I never saw the play version, like it's a decent adaptation. Um, so I kept doing it when I did the book to movie draft with Brad. I kept saying adaptation instead of adaptation. I was kicking
Adaptation.
myself. I was editing. I'm like, ah, damn it, it's supposed to be adaptation.
Adaptation.
I was tired that night. And adaptation is like twice as long as adaptation. So
So many unnecessary syllables in that word.
that's right. But I think
I
it's
think
good.
that's.
Like this is I want to see musical adaptations that are given a good director. Like this
Mhm.
one had a good track record. He'd been nominated for things before. It got a decent budget. It got the cast that they felt like they wanted to get from it. Like they took the Broadway cast into it, which I always appreciate.
Yes.
Um, and this one, I think, as much as I said some of those big like dance numbers in those scenes were jarring, not being in the stage production, ultimately with how good the cinematography and everything was with the landscapes and the set design, I think it did add to it versus just a filmed version of the stage production.
Right.
Like I think it did make it more immersive. So I think that did end up ultimately being a benefit to it, even though there were some things I'm like maybe I would have done differently.
Yeah.
I think putting it in those vistas and everything added to the movie and the musical.
I agree. It definitely made it more of like a production rather than just a straightforward movie. It felt like
Hmm.
they added that in there to give it more of a theatrical feel because it was a play. So I think they're kind of
Right.
trying to bring that play theater atmosphere and aspect to the movie without them being on a stage. So I get it and I appreciate
Right.
it. I'm just not a fan of the choreography for most of the
Yeah.
choreography.
I
It's
get
just
that.
like bleh. But yeah. I don't think I have anything else on Cyrano. Unless you have anything else, we can wrap it up.
No. Like I always take lots of notes, but I've started just like underlining the ones I'm like, okay, these are ones that I actually care enough about to
Right.
talk about. Oh, I did think just like right off the bat when her whatever her handmaid or whatever is helping her get dressed when she's getting ready for the theater, and she's like,
Mhm.
"Children need love, adults need money." I'm like,
Right.
oh, that's quite the view of
Oof,
of the
brutal.
world.
Right, she ain't
And I
wrong,
mean,
but
at
brutal.
right, at that time especially, like, that's really kinda just how it was. But, no, for being a period musical, I think it's one of the better ones. Is as good as Phantom or Les Mis? Hell no.
Not
Um,
even close. Not even in the same category.
but I think it's definitely worth a watch, especially, like I said, it's a beautiful movie. Like, it looks gorgeous, and for the most part, they are great
Yeah.
performances. So I don't think it's a waste of time. I
No.
would recommend taking, I think it's a little over 2 hours, right around 2 hours.
Yeah.
I think it's worth the time to watch it for sure.
Agreed.
But I
Cool.
think that'll do it
That does
for
it.
this
We'll wrap
one.
it up.
At some point we will spin the wheel to see which movie we do next. I don't even remember what all is on there still, but tune into a mini episode. We will reveal it at some point. And don't forget to go down once more.
Peace.
Later. Were you watching a video or playing music or something? I thought I was hearing voices.
No.
Okay.
Now you're freaking me out.
No, I'm just going crazy.
I'm already convinced that this apartment, this townhouse that I live in,
Yeah,
is
we
fully
have
haunted.
that talk because the painting fell off the wall that one time.
That was the first indication, but it's been a lot of things since then that I'm like, holy shit, something is here. And I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. I'm serious. There's some shit here.
Time to move.
Anyway. Okay. Now you're hearing voices on my microphone. Fantastic.
I hear voices in my head. It's